Why do they use Beelzebub?
I study demonology and things. I just love the word Beelzebub.
Nobody knows what it means, and Freddie never explained it to us.
When Brian May said those words, his voice carried something few people noticed. A pause, a flicker, as if even after decades, the mystery still bothered him. Bohemian Rhapsody had made them legends, but behind its operatic chaos hid a name that would haunt Freddie forever. Beelzebub. Who or what was Freddie calling upon when he wrote that line? And why did he never explain it, not even to his closest friends? Some say it was just theater. Others whisper it was something deeper. A rumor that began long before the fame. According to an old story passed around by fans in the early 90s, Freddie once took a short, unplanned trip, somewhere between his art school years and the birth of Queen. He told almost no one where he was going. A friend remembered him saying only, "I need to see something before it sees me." Weeks later, he returned changed, quieter, more distant, almost consumed by an idea he refused to share. Years after his death, a man claiming to be Freddie's distant cousin from Zanzibar told a British tabloid that Freddie had visited a temple built over ancient Persian ruins, a place known to local priests for invoking spirits older than the devil himself. Religious leaders from Stonetown denied it ever happened, calling the story a Western fantasy. But the rumor stuck, and it merged with that single lyric, "Beelzebub has a devil put aside for me." Was Freddie hinting at that journey? Was Beelzebub a metaphor for the price of genius? Or something he believed he had actually met? No one can say. But what unsettles fans most is that he never laughed about it. When journalists asked, he would smile, take a sip of wine, and whisper, "I studied demonology and I just like the word Beelzebub." And that's where the questions begin. Because if it was just a lyric, why did Brian May still sound uneasy all these years later? And what really happened on that mysterious trip? The one even his bandmates never knew about. Whatever it was, it would follow him to the end. In 1975, Bohemian Rhapsody crossed borders faster than anyone expected. People tried to decode it line by line. What was Freddie Mercury really saying? But in one corner of the world, the interpretation took a darker turn. During the 1980s, a cassette version of Queen's album A Night at the Opera was quietly circulating among young Iranians. With it came something unexpected. A small leaflet printed by a state-run distributor, warning listeners about the moral danger in the lyrics. According to the translation, Bohemian Rhapsody told the story of a man who had taken a life and sold his soul, a man who cried out, "Bismillah," calling on God, and was finally rescued from Shaitan, the devil himself. At first glance, it looked like a conservative reading of a rock song, but buried between the lines was something else, a suggestion that the writer knew more than he dared to say. Some Tehran scholars now claim that this interpretation wasn't random at all. They believe the translator may have drawn from ancient Persian texts, where Beelzebub wasn't merely a demon, but a force of fate tied to creative obsession. A spirit that blesses artists, then consumes them. Was Freddie aware of these legends? Could a young man from Zanzibar and Bombay have stumbled upon those stories before writing his masterpiece? Years later, a retired literature professor in Tehran said he had once seen fan notes describing Freddie as a man who knew the old names of the fire spirits. Whether that was genuine memory or myth is anyone's guess. Brian May never commented on the leaflet. Roger Taylor called it religious imagination. But after that story leaked to the British press in the 90s, fans began finding strange patterns hidden in Queen's lyrics. Repeated references to light and fire, to judgment, to voices calling from beyond. Coincidence or intention? As millions sang Galileo, Figaro, Magnifico, few realized that halfway across the world, Freddie Mercury was already being whispered about as the man who might have made music with something more than talent. Before the fame, before the legend, there was Farrokh Bulsara, a young art student searching for identity somewhere between cultures and faiths. But in 1969, something happened that no official biography explains. For several weeks, Freddie vanished. No records, no travel stamps, no clear trace. Just one note left with a classmate. "Don't expect news for a while. I need to see something before it finds me." That sentence would resurface decades later in fan investigations about his missing time. Where did he go? Some say he returned quietly to Zanzibar, seeking documents about his family's Zoroastrian roots. Others insist he went deeper, into the interior of Iran, led by a researcher obsessed with fire temples and forgotten ritual. But one account stands apart. An elderly tour guide from Stonetown, interviewed in 1997, swore he saw Freddie boarding a small boat headed toward the island of Pemba, a remote corner of the Indian Ocean. He described him as possessed by purpose, like a man chasing a sound only he could hear. Freddie carried a notebook in a small metal box, keeping it close to his chest the entire trip. When asked what he was searching for, he replied, "I'm looking for the sound that doesn't exist." The guide claims that later that night, locals performed an ancient coastal ceremony, chanting in a language he couldn't recognize. He remembered the wind rising, the sea glowing faintly, and the young foreigner watching in silence. Like he was listening, the old man said. Not with his ears, but with his soul. A few weeks later, Freddie returned to London. Soon after, his songs began to change, filled with images of guilt, trial, and redemption. Coincidence? Or something he brought back with him? When fans discovered this story years later, they gave it a name, the Beelzebub Journey. And the strangest part? None of Freddie's college friends at Ealing remember seeing him during that period, as if he had truly disappeared and come back different. To this day, no one knows what was inside that little metal box. Some say it held lyrics. Others believe it was something else entirely, something he found on that island and never spoke of again. It began as a rumor whispered among collectors, a single page handwritten by Freddie Mercury that vanished before anyone could verify it. They called it the Beelzebub Letter. According to a former Queen assistant and a man who worked for the band during the recording of A Night at the Opera, Freddie once wrote a private note late at night in the studio. He sealed it inside an envelope marked only with 2 letters, BZ. The assistant swore he saw it with his own eyes. He wrote it like a confession, he said. Then he told me, "If anyone ever finds this, the story will finally make sense. No one knows what was inside." The next morning, the letter was gone, and Freddie never mentioned it again. But here's where it gets strange. A few months later, Queen signed a new contract with EMI Records, a deal so big it changed their entire trajectory. According to insiders, one of the executives, an Oxford graduate with a taste for mysticism, jokingly called Freddie the man who made a deal with Beelzebub. Everyone laughed. But in private, that same executive later admitted that Freddie had once given him a folded piece of paper during negotiations. When asked what it contained, he smiled and said, "Let's just say it wasn't a contract." For decades, fans searched for traces of that supposed letter in archives, memorabilia auctions, even old studio bins. Nothing. Not a shred of paper. Yet one image kept resurfacing, a photograph taken during the Bohemian Rhapsody sessions. Freddie stands by the piano holding a cigarette and a crumpled page in his left hand. Zoom in close enough and you can almost see it. 2 faint letters scrawled in pen. BZ. Coincidence? Maybe. But those who knew Freddie say he was unusually protective of certain notebooks. He'd keep them locked away, refusing to let even Brian or Roger glance inside. And when asked about the meaning of Beelzebub, he would laugh lightly, that elegant, guarded laugh, and change the subject. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," he once said. No one ever does. After his passing, the assistant tried to recover the missing letter, claiming it was the one piece that could explain everything. But before he could speak publicly, he disappeared from the press circuit completely. No interviews, no trace. The legend only grew. Some say the letter was burned. Others whisper it's still hidden, sealed inside one of Freddie's notebooks, resting quietly somewhere in Garden Lodge, waiting. After Freddie Mercury's death in November 1991, Garden Lodge, his beloved home in Kensington, became a shrine. Fans left flowers, letters, and prayers at the tall green door. But among the stories of devotion, stranger tales began to surface. Mary Austin, the woman Freddie once called the love of his life, was left as the keeper of the house. For months, she lived surrounded by silence. The same piano, the same furniture, even the same scent of incense Freddie used when he wrote. But one night, something broke that silence. According to an interview she gave to a private magazine in the late 90s, later pulled before publication, Mary claimed she began hearing soft music coming from the recording room. Not Queen, not anything she recognized. It was a single voice humming the melody of Bohemian Rhapsody, but reversed. When she opened the door, the room was empty, yet the piano keys were vibrating as if someone had just played them. Mary dismissed it as imagination, until it happened again. Each time the sound grew clearer, almost insistent, A few bars repeating the same section over and over. Beelzebub has a devil put aside for me. Neighbors reported lights flickering in the music room long after midnight, though the house had been dark all day. A former housekeeper added fuel to the story. She claimed that when the estate was being cleaned, unburned candles kept reappearing near the piano. Always two, always red, both melted halfway, though no one had lit them. Mary reportedly ordered the room sealed for a year. But the strangest moment came when a spiritual medium visited Garden Lodge at the request of a friend. The medium later described an overwhelming energy centered near the piano bench, something ancient, not malicious, but watching. When she was asked what she felt, she answered only, "He wasn't alone when he wrote that song." To this day, the staff who have worked inside Garden Lodge refuse to stay there after dark. Some say it's just grief echoing through the walls, the presence of genius refusing to fade. Others whisper that something else lingers, something that didn't leave with him. A few nights each year, fans still gather outside the house on the anniversary of his death. They light candles and sing softly through the gate. And sometimes when the street is quiet, someone swears they hear it. Faint, distant, almost like a voice carried by the wind. Bismillah, no, we will not let you go. When Freddie Mercury's personal notebooks were first cataloged in the mid-1990s, archivists expected lyrics, doodles, maybe a few private notes. What they didn't expect were symbols, geometric shapes, strange recurring icons, and cryptic initials scattered across pages that had nothing to do with music. One curator described it as a map of obsessions, triangles intersecting circles, a line of 7 dots. The same 2 letters, BZ, appearing in the corners of different notebooks, the same initials from the vanished letter. At first, people thought they were artistic flourishes, but then fans began to notice a pattern. Across notebooks spanning nearly 15 years, certain symbols appeared in a sequence that matched Queen's album releases. The triangle first appeared before Sheer Heart Attack, the 7 dots before A Night at the Opera. By the time Innuendo was released, Freddie's final notes showed an unfinished design, a broken circle cut open at the top. Some call it the Seal of Beelzebub. An art historian who studied Freddie's sketches privately in 2003 described them as Zoroastrian in form but with Western occult undertones, like he was blending 2 belief systems into one private language. Could these have been mere artistic experiments? Or did Freddie see his life and career as part of a ritual, an unseen timeline he had to complete? In one particularly striking note, written beside the word Rhapsody, Freddie scribbled, "Each note must fall as promised. Each light must pay its price." No one knows what he meant. Brian May, when asked in a 2019 interview, dismissed such theories. Freddie drew constantly. He was a poet with a pen, not a prophet with a plan. But that answer didn't quiet speculation. Fans began comparing those symbols to ancient Zoroastrian and Persian sigils, connected to the spirit of fire, Atar, a being that represents both purification and destruction. In old folklore, Atar was sometimes mistaken for a fallen angel, the one who creates through flames. And if you line up Freddie's drawings chronologically, one strange pattern emerges. Each new album corresponds to an ancient symbol of transformation. It's as if his music wasn't just a career, but a ritual unfolding in time. Whether coincidence or design, one thing is certain. Freddie Mercury's art feels alive, as if still writing its own story long after him. And perhaps that's what the final symbol meant. The broken circle, never closed. An unfinished pact, still waiting for its last note. Recording Bohemian Rhapsody was supposed to be chaos. Multiple overdubs, dozens of vocal layers, the band pushing the limits of what tape could hold. But even by those standards, the engineers said something about those sessions felt different. Long before digital editing, Queen worked late into the night at Rockfield Studios in Wales. According to one sound technician, the nights when Freddie recorded the operatic section were the strangest of his career. The energy in that room was unreal, he said. Sometimes when we stopped the tape, we'd still hear faint echoes, voices that weren't ours, harmonies that hadn't been sung yet. He wasn't alone. Another engineer swore that during playback, the soundboard lights would flicker even when the power was stable. At first, everyone blamed the heat, the cables, or the exhaustion. But when they replayed the section with the line, "Beelzebub has a devil put aside for me," the room temperature reportedly dropped several degrees. Roger Taylor, half joking in an interview years later, said, "It was as if the song was recording itself." One assistant claimed that Freddie often insisted on keeping the studio door closed. not to block noise, but because he didn't want the song to escape. He'd say it with a grin, yet his eyes gave away something else. An awareness, almost fear of what he was summoning through his music. Even after the sessions ended, strange incidents continued. When Bohemian Rhapsody was finally mixed, Brian May recalled a persistent hiss in the background of the final tape. A sound engineers couldn't remove. It wasn't feedback. It wasn't static. One described it as a voice breathing between the notes. In the end, they decided to leave it, buried so deep most people would never notice. Years later, when the master tapes were digitized, technicians reported another anomaly. A brief, inaudible frequency spike at the exact moment Freddie sings, "For Me." The same moment he mentions Beelzebub. One specialist described it as a pulse that doesn't belong to human sound. Skeptics dismiss it as tape distortion, but others believe that moment was the closest Freddie Mercury ever came to revealing what truly haunted him. And here's the part that still gives fans chills. During one late-night playback, the band reportedly stopped the tape in silence. Freddie looked at Brian, then at Roger, and whispered, "He's here." No one asked who he was. They simply rewound the tape and kept recording. As the 1980s drew to a close, Freddie Mercury's lyrics began to change. Gone were the playful riddles and operatic bravado. What emerged instead was something raw, personal, almost prophetic. In "It's a Hard Life," he sang of a love that turns against itself. In "The Miracle," he called life a secret that no one can define. And in "Innuendo," the very last album released during his lifetime, he left behind verses that many now read as his farewell. "You can be everything you want to be. Just turn yourself into anything you think that you could ever be." At the time, fans heard inspiration. But when you look back through the lens of the Beelzebub legend, something else emerges. A man writing as though he were trying to bargain with something unseen. People close to Freddie say he grew fascinated with themes of light and fire during his final years. His bedroom was always filled with candles. He'd often ask for them to stay lit long after everyone went to bed, whispering, "It feels alive when the flame breathes." To his staff, it was poetic. To those who knew his Zoroastrian upbringing, a faith where fire is sacred and represents divine truth, it felt like something deeper. A nurse who cared for him near the end recalled finding small sketches beside his bed. Circles, flames, and a broken triangle. The same symbol that appeared in his old notebooks. When she asked about it, Freddie smiled weakly and said, "It's just a reminder that everything burns before it's reborn." Around that same time, fans began to revisit his older lyrics, noticing eerie parallels. In Bohemian Rhapsody, a man begs for mercy from unseen judges. In Who Wants to Live Forever, he laments that this world has only one sweet moment set aside for us. And finally, in The Show Must Go On, his last great anthem, he declares, "Inside my heart is breaking, my makeup may be flaking, but my smile still stays on." To some, those words are pure courage. To others, they sound like a man fulfilling a promise, finishing a pact he never named. In the last weeks of his life, visitors said he became obsessed with the idea of light leaving the body. He would gaze at the candles for hours, sometimes murmuring lines that no one could fully hear. When one friend asked if he was afraid, Freddie simply replied, "No, the light knows where to go." And just like that, as quietly as a flame disappearing in the wind, the man who once sang of Beelzebub was gone. But the questions remained. Did he fear what waited for him? Or did he already make peace with it long ago on that forgotten island where it all began? April 20th, 1992, Wembley Stadium. 70,000 fans gathered for the Freddie Mercury tribute concert. One of the biggest live events in rock history. It was meant to be a celebration, a farewell, a final thank you. But for many who were there that night, it felt like something else. As the sun began to set behind the stage, the first notes of Bohemian Rhapsody echoed through the air. Not sung by Freddie, but projected on screens. His voice resurrected through the speakers. And at that moment, a strange phenomenon occurred. According to several technicians, a sudden power surge caused one ring of stage lights to flicker in unison, forming a perfect circle of light above the crowd. It lasted only a few seconds, but long enough for thousands to see. Later, when footage was reviewed, the pattern didn't appear on film. It existed only in memory, like a shared vision among those who had been there. Roger Taylor, speaking years later, called it a weird but beautiful glitch. But fans called it the circle closing. Some claim the light appeared again briefly during Elton John and Axl Rose's duet of Bohemian Rhapsody, right as the line, "Beelzebub has a devil put aside for me," played. A single spotlight fell on the piano, though no one had programmed it to do so. When asked about it, the lighting engineer laughed nervously. That cue didn't exist in the board. It just happened. In the weeks following the concert, stories multiplied. A crew member said that during rehearsal the sound system glitched 3 times in the exact same place, the operatic break. Another said that during teardown the main monitor flashed the letters BZ before shutting off completely. Engineers blamed outdated wiring. Fans saw something else. A final signature. Even Brian May admitted that the night carried an energy he couldn't describe. It was like Freddie was there, he told a journalist. Not in a ghostly way. Just present. Like he refused to let the music end. In the crowd, many swore they felt it too. A sudden warmth, a surge of sound that seemed to come from nowhere. Some called it love. Others called it the last performance of a pact fulfilled. And yet, despite all these stories, the concert went down in history as a triumph, not a haunting. Because that's the paradox of Freddie Mercury. Even the strangest, most inexplicable moments surrounding him somehow turned into beauty. The man who once sang about judgment, fire, and Beelzebub had left the world with light, pure, overwhelming light. But as one fan wrote on a tribute card left at Garden Lodge the next day, the circle closed, but the echo stayed. Decades after Freddie Mercury's death, the mystery hasn't faded, it's multiplied. Online forums, late-night documentaries, and even academic papers still debate what Beelzebub truly meant. But somewhere between history and imagination, the myth took on a life of its own. In the early 2000s, a small network of Queen fans calling themselves the Circle of Light began meeting online. Their goal wasn't to worship Freddie, but to decode him. They claimed that every Queen album followed an invisible pattern: creation, sacrifice, and rebirth. One member, a linguist from Prague, noticed that certain phrases in Freddie's lyrics mirrored Zoroastrian chants, translated into English phonetics. Another claimed that Innuendo contained 7 hidden acrostics, each beginning with the letters B and Z. Skeptics laughed until the group released their research publicly. Some of their findings were hard to ignore. Freddie's recurring use of light, fire, mirrors, and angels. His fascination with duality, love and loss, sin and salvation, fame and guilt. And above all, his repeated message, that art itself can summon forces beyond the artist's control. But here's where the myth took a turn. In 2011, a former record executive revealed that EMI once received anonymous letters after Freddie's passing, written in handwriting eerily similar to his. Each envelope contained a single phrase: "The circle is open. Let the sound continue." They were postmarked from different countries. No fingerprints, no explanations. The letters stopped after 7 months, the same number of dots Freddie drew in his notebooks. To this day, no one knows who sent them. Was it a hoax by an obsessed fan? Or something Freddie planned? A posthumous puzzle to ensure his story would never end? Over time, the darker pact theory softened. Fans began seeing the legend differently, not as a curse, but as a metaphor. Beelzebub, they said, wasn't the devil at all. It was the shadow that every artist faces, the cost of genius, the fire that burns as it creates. Maybe Freddie understood that better than anyone. Maybe his deal wasn't with darkness, but with destiny, an agreement to give the world his light, even if it consumed him. And perhaps that's why, after all these years, the myth still shines. Because the story of Freddie Mercury was never really about demons or pacts. It was about what happens when a mortal man touches something immortal and leaves a piece of himself inside it. As Brian May once said, looking out at a crowd still singing Freddie's words 3 decades later, "He's still here. You can't kill music. You can't kill light." And maybe that's the real secret behind Bohemian Rhapsody, not Beelzebub, not the pact, but the proof that even when a star burns out, its echo still lights the sky. And maybe that's the real mystery. Not what Freddie Mercury did or didn't believe, but how his voice still moves the world decades after it fell silent. The echoes never stopped. They just changed form. So tell me, what do you believe? Was Beelzebub just poetry or something Freddie left behind on purpose? Do you think there's still a message hidden somewhere in his songs, one the world hasn't decoded yet? Share your theory in the comments. I read them all. And if you felt that spark of mystery tonight, if the story made you see Freddie's music in a new light, then don't leave without subscribing. Because here, every story has another layer waiting to be uncovered. And the next one might just change everything you thought you knew about the legends we thought we understood. Subscribe, Leave your thoughts below and let's keep the echo alive.